Steve, what's up? How are you? Good to see you.
I'm doing great. How are you?
Great, good. You didn't say wonderful, so now I'm concerned.
Oh, wonderful,
Thank you,
wonderful. Sorry.
thank you. Um, I called you this weekend, and you didn't pick up. So
I missed it. It was a video call
yes,
too. So
so you will
yeah, I
find
know.
out what you missed by the end of this podcast. I promise you. Okay?
Me and everyone else. This is going to be great.
Yes. Yeah. So there's that. But before we get that, we have a whole podcast to do. That podcast is called Stuff Summer Says with
Steve.
Steve. Our guest today is Mr. David Eckert. Works for the Texas 247's site, but also is a Penn State alum. So good to hear his perspective on some of the differences. And then you had texted me like just a random hodgepodge list of things, and some of them I do want to discuss, including the one that you texted me about last night. But also I don't know, there's just like a weird vibe of not a whole lot going on, but also feels like a whole lot coming. So maybe we could set the table for summer now that summer is
Okay.
here. Now that it
Like a
is
like a
June.
probably red
Yeah.
and white checkered or blue and white checkered picnic table setting
Yeah.
kind of thing.
There we go.
Okay.
So we'll do that, and then, like I said, we'll get the show and tell. So, all right. Take a listen to our interview with David. We'll be back after this. Steve, our guest today, comes to us by way of Austin, Texas. Well, sort of by way of Austin, Texas, but at least presently in Austin, Texas. So I have one question for him. Let me introduce him first, and then I'll get to the important question. Our
Okay.
guest today is writer slash whatever he told us to call him, because he's not even sure of his title, but he does write for Horns247, which is the 247 sports outfit covering Texas down in Austin. David Eckert, thank you for joining us. I begin with the tough question: have you been to Terry Black's yet?
Of course,
Okay.
actually, it's funny. I've got family here, and we just went yesterday. Yeah, anytime somebody flies in to see me, that's item number one on the list.
Okay.
It's ridiculous. So,
That is the correct item on the list. What is your go-to at Terry Black's?
okay, so it's unconventional, I think, but they've got like this jalapeno cheddar sausage
Yeah,
that I always go
yes,
with.
very good,
Yeah,
very good.
yeah,
I've had that. The mac and cheese also very good. I prefer the brisket because you can't get brisket anywhere
sure,
else
exactly.
up here. You know
Yeah,
that. You learned that by
exactly.
now. All right. Well, that's enough
It's
about
always
barbecue.
food. We need to do a food week sometime.
Yeah,
I mean, we need to just do like a short set of things of food week sometimes because it's always food we come back to.
yeah.
So that's great.
No, yeah.
Thanks
All
for
right.
calling, David.
Now on to the real business. David, thank you for joining us. I want to begin here. You covered Penn State at the Collegian. You kind of rose and did all of that, but then you transitioned down to Austin. I think let's start here. What's the biggest difference between covering Texas and Penn State?
They're similar in a lot of ways, to be honest. I think, I mean, the biggest difference to me is probably, to be honest, like the enthusiasm that there is for everything else. Um, I mean, Penn State is like it's football, and for 2 weeks out of the year, people care about wrestling, and you know, if anyone clicks on your basketball story ever, you've performed an act of God. So, but no, I think here it's like we have to be everywhere because they're good at everything, right? And they care about everything. So that's the biggest difference. But as like a media market, I think it's very similar. Um, it's the access is very similar in that there is none. The the coaching staff's relationship, how they kind of keep the media at arm's length, but they have their guys. It's honestly it's a very similar game. I spent some time in Mississippi at a couple of places too where it was not similar. It was very much, hey, come on in, watch practice, but this kind of feels like I'm going back to the future a little bit in that sense.
You mentioned baseball, and obviously Texas is off to the Super Regional this week. For you, what was the culture shock, or was there one particular moment where you're like, "Whoa, this is a big deal," in the difference between Texas
Yeah,
baseball and obviously Penn State baseball for sure?
yeah. I got the culture shock. So I moved to the South in 2022, and my first I my first newspaper job, really. I worked at Blue White Illustrated for about a year after college, but my first newspaper job was at the Hattiesburg American in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, covering Southern Miss, where like baseball is everything. And so I was like, this is weird, you know. Very quickly had to learn about it because, I'm trying to think. When I was a student at Penn State, I might have gone up there 3 times, maybe, just to throw them a bone type of thing. But, you know, uh, just from like an interest as far as like digital metrics, I mean, baseball um, outperforms football in a lot of senses. Because I think the other aspect of it too is it's not always on TV. It's kind of like the one of the few remaining things where the media, the audience kind of depends on the media to tell them what's happening a little bit in a sense. Whereas obviously, if you're watching Texas football, like that's very easy to access. You don't need me to tell you that Arch Manning completed a pass, right? Um, but yeah, the culture shock was just like my first day at that newspaper was Southern Miss was hosting a regional for the first time in like forever. And it was at like the entire town. And Hattiesburg's not a small place. It's probably big state college population wise. Was just like a buzz with it, and I was like, whoa. So that was fun. That was cool. And I moved on to cover Ole Miss after that, where they were just off a national championship. They really care, and obviously Texas is huge. Historically successful program. So definitely have had to learn what the deal is with that sport specifically.
What's been the, you talked about the coaches, the coaches had their favorites or whatever your words were. How do you figure out the lay of the land and how do you find success or build relationships? Like, what has that process been like?
Yeah, it's tough. Something that I've done here, and I'm going to be honest, like I've been in Austin for going on 2 years, right? There are people who have been here for 40, and so I will strive to have their level of relationships one day, but I realize right now that I do not. And so I've done a lot of stuff with like document-based reporting here that I think has made me original and um, has kind of made me worth my salary because nobody else is doing that. But I've taught myself how to file, good records requests that'll get contracts, that'll get stadium bids, that'll get like non-conference series that were canceled, like that type of thing. And that's really, I think, kind of how I've, been somewhat relevant, I guess, in a place where, there's just a million people who've been doing it way longer than I have. So,
When you looked at the, like, how big is your team and how many
yeah.
people are you competing with when you're trying to be relevant or make an impact or have your stuff seen?
Yeah. So, at Horns247, we have 3 people, including myself. Um, So we have Chip Brown, who is really good at his job. He's like the insider, like the main insider guy, you know. Um, and then Eric Henry, who is like the classic beat writer. And then there's me. And, I think I'm kind of like the beat writer for baseball. And in the other places, I try to fill the gaps with like unique stuff. And it was kind of like that. So I'm actually just recently, which is why I didn't know my job title when we talked about this, but I've only been at 24/7 for about a month and a half. I was at the newspaper here for, a while longer before that. And it was a similar deal where there's older veteran guys ahead of me. And I'm like, all right, how do I, you know, uh, do what I need to do to be good at this job without encroaching on their turf, which is tough. But and competition wise, I mean, it's honestly it's very similar to what you guys are familiar with in state college. I mean, there's I don't know, there's an on 3 site, there's a 24/7 site, there's a what used to be the rival site but is now independent, Orange Bloods. They've got another, they call it On Texas Football, which is a monster here, same model. Um, news There's not as many newspapers, which is interesting. I feel like if you go into James Franklin's press room, or excuse me, Matt Campbell's press room now, there's, every like small town local Pennsylvania paper has a beat writer there. That's not the case here. Dallas and Houston sends somebody. Dallas does not. Um, so that's a little bit different, but and then TV floats in and out, but the environment is similar for sure.
Cool. And just last one for me for now. What was the homework process like to get up to speed at a place? And you've had a couple places now, right? Whether it's
Yeah,
Hattiesburg or Ole Miss or here, because I don't think people think about that when they're going into a career. They're going to cover games. I'm going to do some stuff, but you need to
yeah,
have some context and some history. So how much of that was part of your job at each place early on to try to get some grounding?
yeah. It honestly, I leaned in Hattiesburg and in Oxford. I leaned on the people who had my job before me a lot to do that, and they were extremely helpful, like awesome. Because really, in both those situations, and actually when I moved here, when I moved to Hattiesburg, it was baseball season, the NCAA tournament, really probably honestly the most important time of the year down there. Um, Ole Miss, I took the job in 23. They were, I think, 8-1 at the time, middle of football season. They're playing Alabama this week, here you go, have fun. So that was crazy. And then I took this job, I think it was week two. So that's been really challenging. And you can read, right? Like I read a ton, but I think from talking to people who have lived the history is really like kind of through osmosis you get it. Because here, I mean, my job here at the Statesman that I had, there's a legendary columnist, said Golden. I'm just like, all right, like I need to listen to this guy as much as possible because he just knows. Um, and he's like, all right, you need to read this. You need to know that our newspaper did not vote for Vince Young to win the Heisman in 2020, in 2005. You need to know X, Y, like it just little things like that. And um, just the veterans, luckily for me in every market that I've been in have been really helpful with that.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
What have you noticed different, the same culturally about the fans in fandom down there?
They are, um, it's interesting. I think Penn State has like this weird thing going on where it's like if you don't go to the college football playoff, you're a failure. But also, I think there's also a little bit of a dynamic where they're punching up, right? Like they know they're not Michigan, they're not Ohio State. They retain that little bit of like underdog thing. Whereas Texas fans are like, they look at Texas Tech, for example, if you guys have been following what's going on, and like they're just like, you are like a gnat to me, like it's Texas fans are the big dogs. They're proud of the fact that they're the big dogs. And if the teams do not reflect that, then that's unacceptable, right? Last year, I'll go back to baseball. Like they won the SEC in their first season in the SEC. The SEC is the far and away the best baseball conference. They won it like at a canter by like 3 games, and they got upset in their regional. They did not go to Omaha, and it was like the world was ending. It was so it's just the expectations are ridiculous. Um, and honestly, I'm curious to see how that manifests itself this year with the football team because I mean I think they have a shot to be the preseason AP number one. They were last year and they didn't make the college football playoff, and I don't think people here are going to tolerate too many seasons like that where they have this level where you better meet it. So I think they will meet it this year personally, but if they don't, it's going to get real interesting, I think.
You're a little bit younger than me, but you sound very confident and comfortable in your career. Are you confident and comfortable in your career?
I'm like racked with insecurity about my work and my job, so I'm glad that I present that way, but I definitely, you know, yeah, I mean, it's hard, right? Like it's not a lucrative industry. It's, if you want to start thinking about building a life and making enough money to build a life, you've got to be really, really, really lucky. Um, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, I love what I do. It's like the things that I love about it evolve, right? Like 5 years ago, I'm like, man, like I just love being in this press box for this huge game. Like, but now I'm like, okay, I maybe that doesn't fill my cup the way that it used to, but hey, getting that document with some NCAA violations on it, I mean, that's a thrill. That's awesome. Different things kind of, I guess, bring that out of me still. So yeah, I'm comfortable with where I am. I don't know about confident, but I'm glad that I'm fooling you guys. That's a plus.
What's a good work day?
Wow, that's a good question. Um, a good work day, to be honest, I mean, we have no office, right? So I'm gonna post up at a coffee shop somewhere. Maybe I'm gonna write a feature story that I've been reporting out for a while. Maybe I'm gonna, you know, send out 15 records requests and see what bites. And that to me is the joy of the job, right? Like obviously, you go cover Texas, Oklahoma in the Cotton Bowl, like that's cool. That's really awesome. That still, juices me up. But, I'd probably be lying to you if I said like, man, like I'm gonna be having the time of my life when Texas State comes here on September. You know what I mean? It takes a little bit more nowadays, but really like the work of it still is what I love. Like, let me do something that has depth. Let me do something that's new and fresh that nobody else is doing. That to me is a good work day, I guess.
You talked about the fans' expectations of the program. What are the fans' expectations of the media? And like, who do you hear from if you hear from people?
Yeah, that's a good question too. I mean, they're different now. I mean, at the newspaper, like I think they expected because it's a newspaper, a little bit more critical coverage, right? Now I work for a message board. I work for a fan site where I have, thousands of subscribers who, when I post that story are in there and are going to let me know what they think about it, so I promised myself when I took this job that I would still do critical journalism, that I would not fall into the trap of catering, I guess, to those people who just want to hear how nice and rosy everything is for Texas all the time. So I hear from them when I write something that they don't like 100%. And, part of maintaining that community is, okay, like, all right, Horns fan 42, like, here's why I did this. Here's why I think, yeah, I mean, here's why I did this. Here's why it's important. I'm sorry you didn't like it, but, this is how I'm going to do my job.
Well, I think that stand-up stuff probably there's some respect that comes with that. So that's cool.
I hope
Last
so.
one, last one for me. You've been in the South now through three different stops. What's different, or what do
Yeah.
what's is there a difference?
Oh, yeah, with the job, with like huge cultural difference. I mean, I miss Four Seasons, I'm gonna I was taking the dog out to use the bathroom and it was 95 degrees and that wasn't great. But I think there is it's interesting. The SEC with media markets, I've noticed, has a tendency to demand, maybe not demand, but create a system where like their guys are like exude homerism at a level that I never really found, covering the Big Ten, covering Penn State. Like I read, I'm still plugged into Penn State. I still care. And when I read like the accusations of like, oh, you're a homer, blah blah blah. Like I'm like, you guys have no idea, no clue. I mean, here, I mean, at Ole Miss, guys were going to like wearing full Ole Miss garb and in the press box, and here there's like a guy, every week that like thanks Steve Sarkisian for bringing back a winning tradition to Texas every time he asks a question. Like, it's very different, a
Yeah,
very
clearly.
different atmosphere. Yeah, it's a lot.
Thank you.
You mentioned one of the other big differences that you've mentioned is the opens record request. You did not have access, the ability to do that in state college. That would be my dream. I think a lot of
Yeah.
people's dream to file FOIAs out the wazoo about Penn State athletics in particular. What was that process like for you to figure out how to do that? And you mentioned writing a good one. What does that take?
Yeah, honestly, they're available online. Like, here, if I need South Carolina's athletics budget, like, okay, I'm gonna look up like a template South Carolina like records request. They're available, and you just have to learn or I guess look for examples. It's not hard, but people still don't do it, which is crazy to me. But uh, here, I think really the thing that made me realize like, oh crap, I better figure out how to do this is maybe 3 months after I got to Hattiesburg, and you guys, I don't know if you guys remember this, but Brett Favre
Oh
um,
yeah, that's right.
had the volleyball facility with, taxpayer dollars thing. And, Brett Favre is a Southern Miss alum. He was building that volleyball facility at Southern Miss. And I was like, uh, I have no idea how to add to this story. Like, I could go camp out at Brett Favre's house. That sounds terrible. So
Did he live in town?
he lives outside of town. Yeah.
Okay,
He has
okay.
a house there. Yeah.
So it was possible.
Um,
Okay, okay.
yeah. Yeah. But so what I ended up doing was, and actually I didn't really succeed, but I was like, okay, I wonder if there are emails that I can access from the Southern Miss Athletic Department. And so taught myself, this is the first time I ever filed, but I was like, I'm going to ask for these emails. And, the other thing that you run into when you do this is when you touch on something that they don't actually want to give you, they're like, that'll be $700,000, So, uh, I didn't know any better at the time that you can fight that, but that kind of opened my eyes to the power of that, I guess. And at Ole Miss, actually, so this is crazy, but um, the state of Mississippi does not allow its public employees to have contracts longer than 4 years. Okay. So every football coach at Ole Miss and at Mississippi State would have their publicly available contract, which is 4 years and has nothing on it. It's like, oh, Lane Kiffin is making 800 grand this year. Like, sure, right, guys. Yeah. Um, and they would also have a secondary contract um, run through their athletics foundation that was the real contract. And so together with Steve Berkowitz at USA Today, helped me out with this, but we were able to actually sue and make those contracts public, which is probably one of the things I'm most proud of doing. But it's like, hey, like this is powerful. You can actually do stuff with this. And honestly, a lot of times you just send an email,
Right.
So that definitely taught me a lot.
Cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
cool.
All right. Well, you are a Penn Stater, so we have three questions. One of which is again food related, so that'll nicely bookend the start of the podcast.
Perfect.
Um, the first question is your go-to creamery ice cream flavor.
Oh, what's the name of the it's not Death by Chocolate, is it?
Yeah.
The one with the yeah, Death by Chocolate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything chocolate,
Okay.
I'm a sucker for.
Okay.
Sign me up.
That's good.
Yeah.
You're the czar of Penn State sports. You can make one change for your day. What are you doing?
Gave him
I'm
some power again. It's got some power. Here we go with power.
yeah. I'm I went to Penn State because I fell in love with Taylor Battle and their basketball team, which is a crazy sentence.
That is a crazy
So,
sentence. That
so
yeah.
I think that I would say, hey, we're gonna nuke the Bryce Jordan Center. That's gone. We're gonna build a decent basketball facility, and we're gonna fund that program at a competitive level. Would be
Well,
what I would do. And everyone who would hate me because I would take money from football to do it, but that's what I would do.
you've I assume you've been to the Moody
Strong
Center.
backbone.
Everybody
That's
says
great.
it's great and a great place
Yeah.
to watch a concert or a
Yep.
game. So that's very fair. All right, and you're back in town for one night and one night only. What establishment are you stumbling into?
They've closed all the ones that I
Those are
like.
eligible. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, those are
They
eligible.
exist or not, they're eligible.
Living or dead.
Uh,
Yeah.
I would go to the Skeller.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And specifically the Skeller and not Doggies. You want it to be the
Yeah,
Skeller.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
want to clarify
yeah.
that point. Okay.
I also really liked Jack's,
Oh,
which they
yeah.
also closed.
Yeah.
That was actually I would go to Jack's. I would go to Jack's. They had sports trivia there. That was really fun that we went to all. But
Did you win?
never. Every people were cheating. People were looking it up. I mean, come on, like.
All right, David. Well, we are a Penn State podcast, but where can people find you and your work if they want to take a look?
Yeah. So horns247.com if you want to hate read Texas stuff. Or if you are interested in following along with my shenanigans, it's David Eckert 98 on Twitter. But yeah, I appreciate you guys having me. This was fun.
Yeah. Well,
You're a
thanks
good
for being
follow.
here.
They should follow you. Thank you very much.
All right, yeah, thanks guys.
Steve, what I liked from David there was, one, his honesty with us, but two, I think it was also interesting to hear his perspective on kind of developing or wrapping himself around the culture and understanding how to kind of be a part of that and the challenges that comes with. I think that's something that, particularly with college sports, maybe not professional sports, but anytime we've had college sports people on that have come from Penn State and headed somewhere else, they've always like, this is a learning curve that's tricky to pick up. And I think it's interesting to hear how he went about doing that. I thought that was a good perspective from him.
And I think the people that do it well acknowledge that and take the time to do that, right? It's not just I'm going to plug and play. What worked at this place is going to work at another place. There's history, there's tradition, and he's smart and always well prepared. Like that's the kind of thing that when I read, even as a collegian, when he was the collegian, like he was well prepared, and I think that serves him well in what he's doing now. Like I mean, he's been my connection for SEC stuff, the past, almost half decade, whatever he's been down there at different schools. So he does good stuff.
I think the other thing that was interesting was about the FOIA and open record stuff, and I think that's something like that I had never really thought about it, but that is such a tool that journalists have that Penn State, and this isn't a knock on Penn State or the College of Com, but like Penn State just doesn't have the ability to. So it's interesting to hear how he went about kind of uncovering that and turning that not just into something, but something that kind of helps him stand out. Because I think that also adds legitimacy to, if I was a reader and I was seeing that, okay, I don't know who this guy is, he seems to be new, but these are important things that he's talking about and writing about. And I think that when you're building credibility goes above and beyond in a long way.
Yeah, and you're giving right people who are reading you something different than somebody else isn't. And I mean, it's not that it's. He said it's not. It's not. I'm sending an email, but you do have to do the work and the preparation to think about. Okay, what do I want to ask for?
Right.
How is this going to work? So there's a thoughtfulness to it that I think again serves him well, and he's smart enough to say, hey, I don't know that being in the press box for this game is going to be the highlight of my life, but there are some things that motivate him, and I think that comes through in what he does. So I think that's cool.
Yeah. Well, thanks to David for joining us. I thought that was great.
Thanks, sir. Thank you, David.
Steve, you texted me like, what do you want to talk about on the podcast this week? And it's not that I don't have anything. There's just kind of like a whole lot of nothing going on, but a whole lot of stuff coming. And I feel like the vibe of summer to kick off Penn State summer is quite quiet compared to last year. I think and you alluded to that, maybe stadium feels to be the biggest thing that feels semi-quiet. We have asked to hear what's going on. We haven't gotten an answer on that. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. But yeah, I don't know. What's the vibe? You live in State College, so what's the vibe?
Yeah, I know you mentioned, as you talked about, it's not like the dog days of summer, like when people are trying to get through things. It's almost kind of the exact opposite. So there's no such thing, I guess, as the puppy days of summer, but like it's just kind of quiet. Like last year, the stadium was, they're going to be temporary seats. Oh, they're really high. Who's going to sit in those things? Now people are like, yawn. It's high. But that's been interesting. Like there's not that antsiness about, I guess, because they did it last year, and people have been exposed to it, but there's not. Doesn't seem like people in general are that curious about it, or that you're getting like little updates. I mean, they showed some pictures. They had stakeholders in 2 weeks ago, and you got videos and some drawing kind of thing. So it's been quiet, like low key. I mean, even this time last year there was hockey stuff, right? Because the Gavin stuff was breaking. I mean, they got 2 guys, I guess, in NHL camps along with Gavin this year at this time, but it just does seem more subdued, which is, I guess, good. People are used to it, not as, I don't know, panicky. I don't know.
And maybe that's what it is. I mean, even Penn State, I think it was last year that even Penn State baseball season ran a little bit longer, right? Because they went to the Big Ten tournament. They did pretty well out there again. So, now that we're into super regionals or heading into the week of super regionals for baseball, like, it definitely feels like the off season this year, and I think even you could quantify it by the amount of blog posts that we have done compared to like last year. Like,
that's true.
There's just been a harder drop off. I think some of that we talked about with the success, or maybe more so lack of success with the athletic program this year. I think the stadium thing to me is interesting because, to your point, that was all anybody was talking about last summer. And to your point, I mean, people are talking about it, but it doesn't feel the same anticipation. And honestly, to me, it's far more interesting this year around because now we actually pretty much concretely, pun intended, know what the structure is going to look like. It's just going to not have the bells and whistles this season. There is already all the change with the lights over on the suite side. There's some talk of the sound system getting an upgrade, some talk of I guess they're doing something to the North scoreboard, which I haven't been able to figure out, so if anybody listening knows, could clarify that for us. I think that's also interesting. But to your point, I think people are like, okay, like we know they're working on it this year, and then it'll be a little bit of a mess for one more year, and then next year is the real year. I mean, I think even the Adidas thing feels quiet. We're still 28 days away from that kicking off. And that feels like there's not a buzz going there.
Do you have expectations for the kickoff?
I do. I legitimately do. I think there needs to be some sort of great video rollout type thing there. I think there should be a press event of some sort. Not saying that there is, but there should be some sort of press event with mannequins of showing this is what the uniforms are going to look like. Obviously, the football uniforms aren't going to change that much. It's not going to be that interesting or groundbreaking of a change. But I am interested to see what volleyball looks like, or really any of the Olympic sports, women's soccer, men's soccer. Like, I think that's a bigger part of this. I think the other expectation is, what is the accessibility of merchandise for fans on day one of what can I go buy? Because I'm going to buy something. Like, I think everybody that is supportive of the Adidas thing is going to buy something in those first days. How much is going to be available? Is it just going to be a couple things, or is it going to be a whole, like you would get for any other year, type arsenal of stuff? I think that's interesting. I think the other thing with the Adidas thing that I hadn't been thinking about, and now, speaking of things coming this summer, the World Cup is happening this year, right? Like, how does a World Cup impact, which is Adidas' Super Bowl? That's a terrible way of putting it, but that's the best way to put it for the American brain. Like, how does that rollout of all of that, and all the commotion of that, help or hurt something on the totem pole of college athletics team that purportedly is one of the top teams in their arsenal?
That's what they've told us, right? I mean, I think that's the thing that I'm waiting for. I feel like Charlie Brown and Lucy. to get excited about them having some big rollout and it being the honor, but I do think that would be my expectation, right? Here's the kits for the soccer teams. Here's what's going on. Here's the availability stuff. Get your merch. I mean, on July 1st, it should be like a national holiday for them in terms of, for Penn State athletics, in terms of what they're rolling out that way with Adidas. And if it's not, then it feels like then if it's not, which maybe it is, maybe that's why I think so quiet. People are focused and stuff. But if it were not to be, then they would be taking the same tone and approach toward Adidas as Nike apparently supposedly took toward them, which would be a mistake.
I think it's will be a fascinating thing to keep an eye on in terms of like from the fandom perspective, because like it will be another reminder of where fans do or don't sit in terms of the eyes of Penn State athletics these days.
I mean, I think they'll do something, and I think it should be. I mean, my expectations are. When I asked you what are your expectations, I thought my expectations maybe aren't high, but the more I think about it, my expectations are high for that. This is what they've been building to. This is the thing that's going to be a revenue differentiator, or at least assistance in terms of the NIL world. We're the top school from Nike, apparently, from what they told us last fall when this happened. So let's see it. Every team, every sport, hour upon hour on July 1st. Make it insufferably obvious that you're excited about you have a new partner with your uniforms and whatever else, and what's it going to look like. And even if fans don't respond, which I still think they will, maybe not overwhelmingly so, but they'll respond, hype all day long.
Yeah. Well, and I think Penn State is currently losing that PR battle, right? Like I think generally speaking, the pulse of Penn State fans is they are upset about switching from Adidas to Nike. Or sorry, Nike to Adidas. And I think it's an uphill PR battle that they have to nail to gain some momentum from. And if they don't, I think it's interesting, because then it's like another one of those things of like, all right, what's going right for us lately?
Well, and Adidas has many different brand ambassadors from other schools, professional partners, and whatever else, who can be part of this, right? Who can be welcoming Penn State to Team Adidas and the Adidas family. So my expectation would be those things as well. So it'll be fun to see what happens in another few weeks.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. I feel like that'll get us through the summer. That will be the crux of the podcast for the summer. We will have a couple things that we'll need your assistance on. We will do some stuff around the Nike goodbye and the Adidas hello. We will, of course, then in July, once we get to July, we will do our usual preseason stuff. And then August, how it works, pretty football heavy. So there's that. The finances came out. Anything surprising? Anything earth-shattering? Or no?
No. I mean, but again, it's just always the amount that's being dedicated to the effort, right? For those people who are the old curmudgeons, right? Oh, okay, it's worth that much, and what's the payoff? Yeah. And are you able to support that every year? Yeah. And probably more going forward. It's a lot.
I think the only thing that was interesting to me was that Cale Sanderson, it appears, I forget the exact language, but the top 5 people from the athletics arm get added into that report. And so he is no longer one of the top 5, I guess, being replaced by Tom Allen. So we'll see how that rolls out this week, or it comes out, now next year in the wash. I think that one's mildly of note. It does seem like a lot of Kraft got a lot more bonus, so it does appear that he's got something in his contract related to athletic department performance. And I
so next year that may be lower.
So there's a good possibility that it's lower. Mike Rhodes went down, but I'm sure some of that's just how it's front loaded, back loaded, and contract stuff like that. So there wasn't anything that earth shattering out of it, unlike last year where we got Cale Sanderson's salary. I think that was interesting to see where he ranks. So there's that. You were fired up about an article you saw, a ranking you saw.
Oh yeah, that was right. Penn State is a top 50 program according to Ken Palm in the past decade. I just don't have words.
Can I play devil's advocate?
Well, and the more I thought about it, what 34 teams make the tournament because there's 30 something. So maybe you're a top 50 program, and maybe 50 is a lot. So that's not a meaningful thing. If it was top 30, I'd be more appropriately shocked, I guess. Is that what you're going to tell me?
I thought about it because I at first agreed with you. I was like, oh, that doesn't make any sense. And then I thought about it a little bit. There was a year in there where Penn State won the NIT. I don't know how that factored into it. It's not nothing. You're still the 65th best basketball team, maybe a little bit better that year, right? The COVID year, they were a top 10 team, and then they went to the tournament. So like 3 out of the, that's terrible to say, but 3 out of the 10 years, not bad.
There you go.
They've been kind of middling some years. Some like this year was really bad.
There's your Penn State basketball slogan. 3 out of 10 years. We're kind of middling, Although I saw Coach Rhodes said it's going to be different this year, whatever that means when they had the coaches versus cancer. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what else you would say, but still.
It's going to be different this year. I don't know. I struggle being in the day-to-day of it, but I can understand how potentially maybe you could get there with some logic and math and arithmetic.
Look at us. See? Look at us. Open-minded and helpful, especially you. Look at namesake of the
You were
show.
not open-minded about it.
I was not. When I first saw it, I almost fell down. I'm like, just no way. But I did kind of dial it back a little. It's just still striking, right? And I guess that's why they shared it, right? Because it's striking. So
where do you think Penn State football, if you could do Ken Pom for football over the last 10 years, where do you think Penn State football would be?
They're a top 8 program, right?
I think so. I think they're probably 6,
They're
7, 8, somewhere in there.
They're the stuff that, Russ sends us every time. The team that has done the most of this, but just hasn't done that, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. Since none
Might
of
even
you,
more than 8. They're probably top 6.
Since none of you are in our group chat with Russ
right.
once a week will just send us a graphic of how Penn State probably should be doing better.
Program with the most NFL draft picks in the past decade, and there's only one that hasn't made the
He's given us that split every which way.
Right.
But
they probably are top. Maybe 6.
I would say. I'm gonna say like 7 feels the correct number to me, but I could see how you get the 6. Okay, all right. I'm glad we got all your feelings out about that. Was there anything else? Anything else?
No, tell me the show and tell. I've been waiting.
All right, this week's Okay Young Guy brought to you by the fact that Steve did not pick up a FaceTime call for me, so now I know how his daughters feel.
I was going to say, yes, you do. Well, it's usually,
I went to not a thrift store.
It would have been more appropriate if you'd have picked the FaceTime. I thought I picked it up and you said, is Susan there? Because that's what happens to me.
Okay.
But still, go ahead. Sorry, go. You went to a thrift store.
That's fine. I went to a antique store this weekend in where were we? Brunswick, Maryland. We live close enough to the border down here that we do get when you go to antique stores, there's occasionally 1 or 2 Penn State things.
Yeah, you've gotten stuff this way before.
Yeah, one of my best Penn State finds ever was a belt buckle I got at the one thrift store here right up between Frederick and Hagerstown. I called you because I thought that you would be particularly interested in these. I walk in, there's a giant bowl of, are you ready, Penn State buttons, like the bank buttons.
Nice.
Several of which I was like, oh, these are from Steve's era. So this is the Pitt game in '89. This one, the Have No Pity. Yep. PSU over WKRP, which I think I bought specifically because I love that show, which is from a Cincinnati game in '88. Yep. Which, I called you because I was like, Steve, would
have been Cincinnati in '91. It would have been wedding day for me. So,
well, I have 1990. That was the other one. So, have that one.
Those are good finds.
That one came, and then there was this Disarm Pit one. I found out from the Button Man, Jonathan, who I'm forgetting his last name, and I'm sorry, Jonathan. I reached out to him. I was like, "Can you?" Apparently, these ones from FM Trust / WCJ 800 AM. These are not the legit ones. These are like a bootleg, rival ones. Yeah. So learned that.
I did not know that. I knew there were paper ones for a while because he's missing like a paper one from like 1972 or something.
Yeah, he said I think he's only missing 3. I think is what.
Yep.
This one I am most proud of. This is from the 2005 Ohio State game. I was like, I think this is because it doesn't have the game on the back. The person who owned these, they kind of knew what they were doing because they've got the game on the back, like you're supposed to do, and some of them has got the score. Anyways, all your era of when you were a student,
There you go.
I called you and you could have
I
picked
blew
up.
it. Whatever. I will next time. I'll pick up
So
and be fully ready for what people call me to say is mom there, because that's really much what the phone
next
calls.
time,
So,
again, it might have been your first ever game in there, and could have had the button.
Could have been. No, the first ever game was Temple when I sold my shirt. I told that story before. So we can look for that button now.
No, I was like, yeah, that's cool to have.
Those are good finds.
Yeah.
Good finds.
Yeah, good finds. So, all right. That's this week's podcast. I think we'll have some random thoughts on the blog maybe this week. I thought I was going to do random thoughts, and then I decided to write about women's volleyball.
I'm finally going to write replay. That was one of mine.
Okay.
So.
That was also a topic of discussion, kind of going around the college football world right now. So there's that. We'll have that this week. We'll get you through the summer. We've got a couple of things planned already. Like I said, a couple later in the month, we'll have some stuff around Nike and Adidas, and need some.
We've got some good podcast guests lined up too.
Yeah.
A couple decent ones. So yeah.
I'm excited for those interviews. So we'll get through summer together collectively, and then we'll get to football season, and then it's showtime. Thank you, David, for joining us. Website where you can find all of this stuff. Oh, one thing, we have slightly redone the football page, the football hub, making that hopefully a little bit easier to navigate. That is part of the process of this summer. Going to try to make that more smooth. Always trying to find more random things to include. So if there's something you want to see, player stats, etc., we can make it happen. So there's that. The website is called stuffsummersays.com. On that website, there's a section called With Steve. We've got a podcast which you just listened to. 5 stars, thumbs up. Give us a subscription. That's completely free. You can also sign up for our newsletter too. Also completely free. We're just giving away things at this point.
Quality bargains all the way around.
Yes. Yeah. So there's that. My email is Darian@stuffsummersays.com. Steve's is
Steve@stuffsummersays.com.
Perfect. 5 stars, thumbs up. All that. Lastly, you can find me on the internet at Stuff Summer Says. You can find Steve
At Steve Samsel.
See ya. Bye.